Emina 36 na Legislature in Guam is back in session. We're back from our recess, and we are still on substitute bill number 151-36 COR. And Vice Speaker Munoz-Barnes, you had the floor.
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to continue, and I promise I'll try and make this really short. I did say I had an amendment or two, and I do have two. I'd like to proffer the first one in the spirit of cooperation and working through with what was talked about this morning. I'd like to make an amendment to page 4, lines 5 through 7, to amend section 66503A2 to read, "It is unlawful to remove this notice until such notice is complied with. Any person who removes this notice may be fined up to $10,000. That would be the First Amendment, colleagues. I hope you can give it favorable consideration.
On the amendment, is there, Senator Moylan, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the author of the amendment. Madam Speaker, I support this amendment. I agree with it and I'd like this amendment to move forward, and I ask my colleagues to do likewise. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to rise in support of this amendment. And one of the key words here is when they change the shall to may. It allows that what other colleagues have mentioned, the compassion. If there's a need to find them, then find them. But if there's a need to give some leniency, then so be it, and then we move on from there. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, Senator Taitagui, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I stand in full support. This is what we were mentioning earlier, to ensure that we have that lenience for DPW to do so, and I'm happy to hear that this amendment is coming through. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the amendment? If not, then the sponsor may close on the amendment. Okay, so on the amendment, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. Vice Speaker Munoz-Barnes, you are recognized.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. Again, in the spirit of working on both sides of the aisle and making sure that we give the opportunity for the just give the opportunity to have that parity on both sides. I want to ask my colleagues to look at this amendment that is being proffered by me right now on page 8, line 11 through 19, is to reinstate what I deleted earlier, section 66507D in the bill to read, and it was what was originally in statute, just we deleted it earlier, but I just want to put it back in to put that safeguard that any person violating the provision of this article pertaining to unsafe structures, including failure to vacate either repair or demolish such structures, who is the owner of the real property that has been classified as an industrial or commercial site in accordance with section 60107, chapter 60, article 1, title 21, Guam Code annotated, shall be fined annually and an amount equal to 20% of the assessed value in the subject property, and such fine shall be prorated for any portion of a year in which the violation continues. The fine provided in this subsection shall be a lien on the property if unpaid for more than 90 days. And then on that, the next line, if you want to take it separately.
Yes, if we could take it separately. We'll start with this one. So page 8, we're restoring subsection D, which had been deleted in the substitute version of the bill, not by you earlier, but by the substitute version of the bill had been deleted. We're going to restore subsection D. On that amendment, Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the amendment, provided that we stay in line with what I mentioned earlier, compassion, take care of the people, and also take care of what we need to get rid of. And maybe the word shall should be may. I'm offering that to my colleagues to seriously consider that. And I can work to get the amendment written out, and then we can get that. It's just a change wherever it says shall be, may be.
Is that on line 15, on page 8, line 15?
As in-
Shall be fined?
It shall be fined, and also it says, and shall be prorated, and may be prorated. And the reason why, because it just all depends on what the circumstances. And if they find, DPW finds that the person is literally just doing whatever he wants, then the may it becomes a shall automatically. But it allows that flexibility, Madam Speaker.
All right, while we're getting that in writing, I will continue to entertain the amendment to the amendment. So there's 2 instances of the word shall that are going to be changed to the word may. That's on line 15, shall be fined, will be may be fined, and line 16, shall be prorated, will now read may be prorated. So on that amendment to the amendment, Senator Taitigui, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, I think there actually is 3 locations of shall. That's all I have to say. I stand in full support of the amendment, but I think it's the areas is shall to be defined, and then shall be prorated, and then shall be a lien.
Well, do you want to include those as well?
If we can just add them all, please, Madam
Okay,
Speaker.
then be specific. Which line? Shall? I didn't
As
think
we
you
look-
wanted the one on line 18.
As we
so
look
please
at
be
page
clear.
8,
Yeah.
you'll find the first shall would be on line 15, if I'm correct, and then you'll find it again on line 16, and then the last one will be on line 18. And I think that's what my colleague and I had discussed. We were just trying to count them all. It's a total of 3.
And you want the shall to change to may in line 18 as well?
That's correct. So that the Public Works has the opportunity. If they find that they're just not doing anything, then they can apply the full extent of the law.
All right. We're going to take a 1-minute recess to put that in writing, please. Yes, 1-minute recess. back from recess. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized on your amendment to the amendment. If you could clarify, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For clarification, let me pull out the original. The shall will be, to me, would be on line, where the fine's at, line 15. And then we'll skip line 16 and go to the line 18, where the shall will be may. Those are the only two. So we're still back at 2 versus the 3. After we discussed this with my colleague and the legal, that's where we left off. And it's being printed, if I'm correct, right now.
Yes. So on the amendment, on lines 15 and line 18, to change the word shall to may. So instead of shall be fined and shall be a lien, we'll now read may be fined and may be a lien. On that amendment to the amendment, is there any objection? Or Senator Moylan, you are recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for my colleague for the additional amendment. I do support this amendment, wish to move it forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment to the amendment, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. We're now back on the original Munoz-Barnes amendment. On that amendment, is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Ma'am? Oh,
If not, then the sponsor may close on that amendment.
yes, Madam Speaker. Just hoping that my colleagues vote for this amendment, and then I have one more amendment to proffer. Thank you.
All right, so colleagues, to be very clear, we are doing only the upper part of the page that was passed out. We're doing reinstating 66507D in the bill as amended. Is there any objection to that amendment? Any objection? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. Senator Munoz-Barnes, Vice Speaker Munoz-Barnes, you are still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm looking for my glasses. Hold on. Age is catching up.
On the bottom of it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And then my last amendment, Madam Speaker, is line 23, page 5, through line 2 of page 6. It's just to delete section 66503C, 3 as renumbered in the bill. So just to delete it. Okay?
Okay.
I hope my colleagues give me favorable consideration on that.
All right, on that amendment, it's located at the bottom of the page of the previous page that was passed out. 66503C3 to be deleted from the bill. Is there anyone who'd like to be recognized on that amendment? On that amendment, if not, the sponsor may close on her amendment. All right, is there any objection to this amendment? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. Vice Speaker, you're still recognized.
Again, Madam Speaker, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of the main motion, but more importantly, to continue the collaboration on both sides to make sure that we truly enforce those who are violating and those who don't want to work with the government to correct any facilities that need to be repaired or taken down, and they don't listen, then they're going to get it. But for those who have a good cause, that we as a government can continue to work with them. So thank you, and I want to thank the good author for giving me the opportunity to work closely with him, and also my colleagues who literally spoke in support of the efforts, but also had concerns and just wanted to see how we could strengthen this bill and make it great for everybody. So thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to rise in support of the main motion. Sainamasi.
Sainamasi, Vice Speakers. On the bill, as substituted and amended, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Bill 151. Anyone else? On the bill? Senator Shelton, you are You are recognized.
Sijis Masi, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of this bill, and I shared in the public hearing that I was concerned about the idea of very punitive means as a solution to our derelict buildings, but understood from the Department of Public Works that this was a way forward for us to address the issue of derelict buildings, and that there was many concessions made in this substitute version of the bill to address the issues brought up in the public hearing. And we have been working with the Department of Public Works through the Committee on Tourism and Parks to address the concerns in Tumon, as the author has done as well. But we know that derelict buildings are throughout our villages, not just in Tumon, and they become eyesores and danger zones for our community, and that this type of broader solution is necessary at this time. And I do support the bill because it ultimately promotes safety and island beautification, things that I think everyone can stand behind. And it also encourages, at the same time, responsible development, planning, and most especially maintenance of our structures here on island, because we want things to be safe, to last, to serve our people well. And my main concern in the bill was the prohibition and penalty section dealing with those who enter buildings unauthorized, those who trespass into these derelict buildings. And I feel that adding penalties for those who are entering these structures is not something that will serve us well, because we know that many of the people who are entering derelict buildings are those who are in search of shelter. Many times our homeless population, those who are find themselves in very unfortunate situation, and we should not be implementing further fines, punishing these people who are trying to look for shelter, escape their suffering. And so I have worked with the author to offer this amendment, a very simple amendment to add the word "or" between the penalty of $1,000 per violation, or shall be required to perform community service, to ensure that not both of these punishments are given to any violator trespassing into these derelict buildings, knowing that they are potentially a homeless individual, someone seeking shelter, who do not have the means to begin with to pay for this type of punishment. And I know that we will continue to look for ways to solve, to find a solution that will help these individuals faced with homelessness, so that the seeking shelter in these buildings are not the route that they have to take. So I ask for our colleagues' support of this amendment.
On the amendment, Senator Moylan, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the author of the amendment. I support this amendment. I think it's very helpful. It gives us that opportunity as well to really relook at this, to do the right thing. I think it's a good amendment. I ask my colleagues to support it as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on the amendment? On the amendment? If not, then the sponsor may close on the amendment. All right, is there any objection to this amendment? Any objection? Seeing no objection, amendment passes. Senator Shelton, would you like to? All right. Is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the bill? Bill 151? Any other senator? If not, then the sponsor of the bill may close. Senator Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for all the input and discussion we've had on this bill. I think moving this forward will be very, very helpful for our agencies to help beautify our island with also the compassion that is necessary to ensure nobody is unfortunately, or is not to be harmed. At this time, Madam Speaker, as I do my final closings, I also like to add some co-sponsors to the bill, if I may, Madam Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To add as co-sponsors to the bill from their participation and helpfulness in developing this correctly, I wish to add Senator Joe San Augustine, Senator Mary Camacho Torres, Senator Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes, Senator Jose Pedro Tulahi, and Senator Amanda Shelton.
On that motion to add co-sponsors, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion passes. Senator Moreland, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you again, once again, colleagues. This is something the current law was put into place back in the 70s, and very few changes have been made then to that bill. Now we had this opportunity to introduce and substitute version with the amendments added. We've known that this could be very helpful if done the correct way, and I think we added the amendments to make sure that it's done the correct way. We've seen buildings sitting for 30 plus years, and the frustrations that homeowners have had, and communities have had, and businesses have had to trying to clean up our neighborhoods. I think this is a good start, and we hope that this will help our agencies and our government and the Beautification Task Force and our Mayor's Council to ensure things are done correctly. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleagues.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also wish to move the bill number 151-36 as substituted and amended on the session floor to third reading voting file. Madam Speaker.
On that motion to move substitute bill 151-36 COR as substituted and further amended on the floor to the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. All right, we are continuing with the agenda on second reading. We're currently on bill number 209-36 COR. Senator Shelton, Assistant Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to set aside bill number 209-36 COR as amended by the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture at this time.
On that motion to set aside, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to set aside bill number 236-36 COR as amended by the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor, Procurement and Statistics, Research and Planning at this time.
On that motion to set aside, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Shelton.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to resolve into the Committee of the Whole for the purposes of deliberating bill number 227-36 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations and Housing, and that Senator San Augustine chair the Committee of the Whole.
On that motion to resolve into Committee of the Whole for bill number 227, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We will now take Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I just want to advise the colleagues that we have invited a representative from the Veterans Administration, and it happens to be Ms. Stephanie Flores, because the director and deputy director are all filing in training, and we do have Mr. Byrne. We asked BBMR to be here, but he's ill today, and we do have OFB representative Ms. Llewellyn Terlai here.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Senator San Augustine. So on the motion to resolve, there was no objection, so we will resolve into committee of the whole and proceed immediately.
Committee of the Whole is called to order. My colleagues, we are addressing Bill 227-36 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, introduced by Senator Amanda Shelton, co-sponsored by Senator Talina Cruz Nelson and myself, Senator Joe Snoxian, and Senator Jose Pito Terlai, Senator James C. Moylan, Senator V. Anthony Ada, and Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes. An act to add a new Article 2 to Chapter 67, Title 10, Guam Code annotated, relative to establishing the Veterans Bill of Rights Act in helping veterans access housing, employment, higher education, and healthcare through various local and federal programs, to appropriate $500,000 from the 2021 Earned Income Tax Credit reimbursement and/or the 2021 General Fund Unappropriated Revenues to the Guam Veterans Affairs Office to implement the same and cite this act as the Securing and Ensuring the Rights Veterans Earn Serve Act. Members, materials for the Committee of the Whole are in shared session Google Drive folder labeled 2.24.22, Committee of the Whole. The rules of engagements are 3 rounds for discussion. We will have 2 rounds of questions For the panel, will each senator allotted 5 minutes for questions, not including response. Time to speak may not be yielded from more than one member to another. A member who used that member's time on a question used all that member's time on that question and may not later speak, even if all the time yielded was not used. After completion of the 2 rounds of questions, panelists will be excused. The 3rd round is for amendments or comment. Speak on the bill. Proposed amendment must be submitted in writing to the clerk via 36glsession@gmail.com. Amendments not in writing will be called out of order. My colleagues, a reminder, once we complete the 2nd round, when we start the comments, if the amendments are not there, I will automatically rule anything else out of order. Okay? Fair warning. We've got a lot of time. If any amendments you have, start producing it so that when we go to comments and amendments, we will entertain the first amendments there, and as we're moving, I don't want to rule anybody's amendment out of order. Okay, my colleagues? I want to work with everybody. And that's how we should do business. Now, to complete the discussion bill, I'll allow the sponsor to close, and we'll entertain a motion for the recommendation of the committee of the whole. After we complete the bill, I will entertain a motion to rise from the committee of the whole, at which time I'll report out the bill as recommended by the committee of the whole. At this point, I'll ask the Sergeant Arms to please swear in the panel that are present today. We have currently Ms. Luella Interlive from the OFB. We have Mr. Ed Byrne from the Department of Administration. We have Ms. Stephanie Flores, representing the Veterans Administration. Thank you. Sir.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, you all affirm that any and no information they provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Mr. Chair, you're on the oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms. I now ask the author of the bill, Senator Amanda Shelton, to please give us your opening statement, and then we'll proceed with the questions for the panel. Thank you.
Sedus Masi, Mr. Chair. Bill 227-36 is an act to add a new Article 2 to Chapter 67, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing the Veterans Bill of Rights Act to help veterans access housing, employment, higher education, and health care through various local and federal programs, and to also appropriate $500,000 from the 2021 Earned Income Tax Credit reimbursement and/or the 2021 General Fund unappropriated revenues to the Guam Veterans Affairs Office to implement the same, and to cite this act as the Securing and Ensuring the Rights of Veterans Earned Serve Act. And Mr. Chair, you know that it's no secret we're very blessed here on Guam to have a population that's made up of many, many veterans who are currently serving, who have served in the military, and we've always been ready and willing to serve. Bill 227 seeks to acknowledge that very long legacy, the years of service that many of our island's veterans have given to our country and to our island. Bill 227 establishes a Veterans Bill of Rights that will help veterans access housing, employment, higher education, and health care through various local and federal programs. And it will also appropriate a much-needed $500,000 to the Guam Veterans Affairs Office to implement these policies, and for this act to be known as the SERVE Act. There are men and women on our island who have made many sacrifices for our nation, and yet they are left in the dark not knowing of the services that are available to them that they have rightfully earned. And if they're unaware of these services, the process to receive the needed services make it very difficult for them to receive the help that they need. So Bill 227 will increase veterans' access to the various programs that we have on island, also allow the Veterans Affairs Office to rally the different federal programs available and be even more effective as the liaison between our local veterans and access to these programs. I thank you very much for hearing this bill in the Committee of the Whole today. I thank the panel for being here. Ms. Stephanie Flores representing the Veterans Affairs Office, our Department of Administration, and our Office of Finance and Budget. And I also want to give a special thanks to the University of Guam Master of Public Administration cohort that just graduated for their work, their research, and their effort in helping to advocate for this bill and bring this to our attention here in the legislature, as they were a cohort made up of veterans who wanted to do a very special project to make a difference for their comrades. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. Also, I'd like to recognize within the body our colleagues that are also veterans or family members of veterans. We have first Senator Moylan, he's a veteran. We have Senator Tony Ada. We have Senator Telo Tariwi. The father is a Navy veteran. We have Jose Pino Cherlai, he's a veteran. And we have Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, who's a wife of a veteran. And you have myself, I'm also a retired Army veteran. And then we have also Senator Tilina Cruz Nelson, who's a current member, and she is a veteran. And I might have missed some of you also that have family members that are veterans. And I know that we're very pro. It's like Senator Chris, he's very pro-veteran because he knows what it takes. And Senator Frank's not here, and I know the others here are in full support of veterans, such as Senator Brown. She's mentioned that when we discussed the Gold Star. With that, I would ask now, we will begin with Senator Tello. Unfortunately, there's only two of you in the back, so if you want, I can come to you last, and I'll move to Senator Pito. Are you ready? Okay, Senator Pito, do you have any questions for the panel, sir?
No, Mr. Chairman, I just want to, I'm trying to correlate this Bill 227 with the one that I wrote to the Veterans Headquarters in Washington, D.C. regarding the request of Bill Cundiff. So I'm trying to correlate this if it's not the same, but similar to the letter that I wrote to the Director of Veterans Affairs in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will now go to Senator Tony Ada. Do you have any questions for this?
No questions, Mr.
No
Chairman.
questions. Madam Vice Speaker, do you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chair,
No
not at this
questions?
time, maybe round two. Thank you.
The author, do you have any questions? No, I didn't expect that. Thank you. Senator Jim Warren, do you have any questions? None. Senator Duenas, do you have any questions for this? None. Senator Torres, do you have any questions?
I do have a question for Ms. Flores about the appropriation. The appropriation here is for $500,000, and it is to the Guam Veterans Affairs Office for its operations and implementation of the programs and services under this act for fiscal year 2022. I just wanted to ask you if you can comment, to what extent would that $500,000 cover in terms of implementing this, and how, just so we better understand its uses in this initial implementation and then going forward in terms of sustaining this program.
Thank you, Senator. I will refer you to the fiscal note, and attached to the fiscal note, they indicated the salaries, overtime benefits, et cetera, the different object categories that the $500,000 would cover. And really, the reality of the Guam Veterans Affairs Office as we speak is it's understaffed, and they struggle to do the most basic things. Any addition of staff is going to be very welcome. And the programs that this bill seeks to do are extremely important. We just aren't able to do it right now with the current staffing of the Guam Veterans Affairs Office. So you see the level of staffing as indicated in the fiscal note that was prepared by BBMR, in conjunction with and consultation with the Veterans Affairs Office.
So the second part to that question then is going forward, I'm just trying to have you establish whether this is an amount that can be attributed to sustaining this program in subsequent fiscal years, or is 500,000 more or less the upstart for the implementation?
I believe that it is very likely just the start of it. And then I would hope that through the implementation of technology, they would be able to carry out some of their functions as contemplated in this bill a little more effectively. For example, right now they don't have a case management system. And with the addition of a case management system that Director Uggan has been working with other partners, stateside partners, and other Veterans Affairs offices across the nation, by getting a veterans case management system in place, it will make things a lot easier. We'll be able to more effectively monitor what different programs have been applied for on behalf of the veteran. Also, what are the different requirements, what paperwork is necessary. You know, different programs require different documents, and it can be very cumbersome. So without a real robust case management system, it makes it difficult to be effective. And we all know that navigating federal regulations is not the easiest thing in the world to do. And over years, our veterans have suffered because there aren't enough people who understand how to fill out the forms in the manner in which the federal government would prefer them to be filled out. For example, I do know many of you are veterans, and some of you, I know Senator Pito and Vice Speaker Barnes are very familiar with this. When a veteran is trying to apply for disability benefits, and they do not list their injuries, their service-related injuries or ailments in the right order, it means the difference between getting 100% disability and getting 10% disability. And you're exactly the same situation as your friend who served next to you, and you have the exact same ailments, but because you listed them in a different order, you won't get the benefits that you rightly deserve. And so one of the things that we have done is we applied to the Department of Interior, Office of Interior Affairs, Office of Insular Affairs for a grant to train Veteran Services officers so that they can be accredited, and they would be able to help our veterans fill out that paperwork in the best manner possible so that they get the best outcomes. So that's one of the things, so that we have been working towards this, and this 500,000 would be a good step in that direction, because we're looking to hire people who would be of that caliber, Veteran Services officers. That it's not a regular entry-level data clerk. This is more specialized. You require specialized training, certified by U.S. Veterans Affairs.
That is very good information, and it's very encouraging, because one of the discussion points and the concerns always is if we were to go forward with something new, do we have the ability to sustain it even if revenue is fluctuating? In other words, it becomes lean at some point in the very near future. So what you're describing really is an upstart cost and infusion into standing this up, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be maintained at that level, that in fact it can be sustained with perhaps lesser amounts going into the future. And that's the one thing that I, you know, the assurance that I wanted, that if we gave the veterans this program, this Bill of Rights, that we would in fact be able to make good on that promise in the years to come. So, you know, I thank you for your discussion, because that gave that level of assurance that we're bringing the Veterans Affairs Office to a higher functioning capacity that will then have benefits to our veterans on Guam. And Mr. Byrne, I just want to ask you too, with regard to the fiscal impact, much of the discussion in our other bills as well had to do with what would be the unappropriated amounts of the general fund. And if you can just comment to the fact that $500,000 is in fact a very real and viable figure to meet and that it wouldn't have an adverse impact to our bottom line, if you will.
Yes, thank you, Senator. But may I just preface my remarks that my father was a U.S. Army veteran, and I certainly wish some of these services had been available to him in his time. With respect to your question about the finances, yesterday in this place on another bill, the Director of Budget totaled up the bills that are being heard by this session, and he arrived at a total of 4.250 million against a probable and possible availability of funds of 5 million. And he was comfortable, and I'm comfortable too today, that this bill can be funded from the source, not the EITC source, the source of funds, the alternative source of funds of the excess revenues for 2021.
Thank you, and I just want to end by paying honor and respect to all of our veterans and to those who have family members who were veterans. I too had a father who was a veteran, and he's long deceased, but he also paid a lot of respect to our Vietnam serving members at the time that he could. So it's certainly close to heart, and I praise the sponsor and co-sponsors for introducing this bill, and I give it my wholehearted support. And thank you, Ms. Flores and Mr. Byrne, for your explanations.
Thank you, Madam Senator Torres. I was going to announce that you mentioned about your dad, but also I'd like to also recognize, before I move on to my next colleagues, Senator Torres' daughter, if I'm correct, is also in the Navy Reserve. She's a nurse, so she's a veteran also. I just want to make sure that I covered all the bases. As I'm getting the info, I'm putting it out. Madam Speaker, do you have any comments or questions to the panel, please?
All right, so Stephanie, you're here for the Veterans Affairs Office. All right, thank you for being here today. I know you're also the State Clearinghouse official for Guam, and I want to thank you for your good work up there.
Thank you.
I guess so. My first question would be, this is not something that the Veterans Affairs has been able to get grants for, because I know that they had announced, let me just find that. They had announced in July 2021 a Department of Interior grant to the Office of the Lieutenant Governor for training for 10 more Guam Veterans Affairs Office accredited representatives.
Yes.
And positions meant to help veterans to access health care, disability claims, kind of like what this bill's intending to do.
Yes.
And so that's Department of Interior funds. And I know that we've met with Tim Ungan on many occasions, and he said that he is working on getting federal funds for many projects, including the cemetery. And just wanted to know, so if you could just explain, do we really need to appropriate $500,000, or are we going to be able to fund this out of federal funds or some other grants that they've applied for?
So the grant that you were just talking about, the Interior grant, was the one that I was referring to earlier. And my office put together that grant prior to this bill being introduced. And we put it together because we also attend the Veterans Commission meetings, and we've heard the frustrations of the island's veterans over time. You know, there's even a veteran in my office. I have the spouse of a veteran in my office. But the reason we did that one was to just get it off the ground so that we can have veteran services officers accredited and in place. And the $500,000 here, I say, is a good starting point, because what we need to do is collect the data that is necessary to apply for further grants. So once we have reliable information, you know, the Veteran Service, USVA, the United States Veterans Administration, they want us to give them hard data. And the data that is currently available for the number of veterans that we have on island, how many serve, how many are here, is not necessarily as robust as it needs to be, okay? So how many are using the VASH vouchers, the Veterans Assistance Housing vouchers, how many are out there, how many are availing of medical services. That kind of information is not readily available. Now, when we have this program in place, we'll be able to collect that kind of data in conjunction with a good case management system, which is not current right now. That's something that Director Uggan has been working with. And right now, the reason he's not here is because he's at a conference of state veterans administrators trying to get more funding. So the minute we have certain things in place, federal funds become available. So by jump-starting this program with the initial $500,000, it gets us to a point where we can start collecting reliable data so that we can apply for further grants.
All right, it's been a mandate of the Veterans Affairs Office to collect this data for many years. There have been appropriations specifically for it, for systems to collect the data. There's also been, mandates for the registry, how to, jumpstart that, how to improve it, how over the years, the ups and downs of that registry. Yet, I guess I'm just, this outline of the proposed funding does not even include what you're discussing, the data, what did you call it, software, or
their case management
case management system? Yes. That's not even included. This just talks about personnel, workstations, and furniture.
So my understanding of the agreements for the case management system that have been worked, there's been an intergovernmental agreement worked out between the Guam Veterans Office and another state, I believe it's Utah, to share their case management system. That's why that's not in this budget. So we need the infrastructure, the hardware, the computer systems, the workstations, and all of that, and then the software becomes available.
So the case management system is going to come to us at no cost.
That's my understanding at this point.
That's great. That's what I'm thinking was work, that's what I was told the work that was happening up there was, that was going on, that they were finding all kinds of ways to get these programs implemented federally. And they're implemented already. These programs are here and available, but what we're trying to do is to bring in personnel to inform the veterans of what is available, it sounds like, right? That these trained accredited representatives, which you got a grant to fund.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so I guess I'm just trying to find out between the mandates of the current mandates of the Veterans Affairs Office, the current programs available to veterans that they have availed of in other places, right? Not necessarily in our Veterans Affairs Office. For example, healthcare, they go to the Veterans Affairs, federal Veterans Affairs Office. And that was the disconnect for the data, for the registry. Those who are there were not necessarily part of our local registry.
Correct.
But I guess I'm just not, it's still a voluntary system that veterans will come in, right, and avail of these programs that we're reiterating in this law as mandates of the local Veterans Affairs Office. It still seems voluntary that they will come in and, put themselves down locally in the registry. So, so I'm just trying to make sure that we are really hitting the root of the problem, right? As opposed to just throwing money to add more employees. But trained veterans, the one that you got the grant for?
Yes.
Excellent. Congratulations, that's excellent. That, I think, is what's always been needed. It's those, when they're filing claims, they need to be trained. And I always thought that the more we could bring in, trainers from off island to keep training everybody, train the lawyers on Guam, train everyone, and keep doing that so that we can get everybody available to help these veterans. Train the entire public defender's office, right? Train everyone. But the Veterans Affairs Office is currently within the Office of the Governor.
Yes.
And I was looking that, the Office of the Governor is, of course, able to help this Veterans Affairs Office with whatever they have, and you have, so that's good. The bill's been amended a little bit to for example, the UOG and GCC parts where we were mandating previously, mandating them what they had to do at UOG. Looks a little bit more, how do you call it? like consistent with their current policies now, not necessarily imposing ourselves, but are you worried that we would be overstepping, their accreditation where they want the legislature not to tell them how to grade, not to tell them, who to, especially the grading and that type of thing, who to give credit to? Yeah, do you think we've resolved that in this new version of the bill?
Well, I'm not certain that I have the most updated version of the bill, but the original version that I read, I will tell you that personally, based on my background, I was very concerned about mandating UOG and GCC to do just that with the very strict language that was in there, only because of the requirements of academic freedom and the independence of the institutions. So that was a concern for me at the beginning, but I don't know. I haven't seen what the amendment says. And I think so long as it's more permissive and it's a allowable situation based on certain minimum standards, I think that's, as long as you've got the university's input, that should be okay.
All right, I'm not sure, but yes, I share your concerns, and I'd like some clarification on that. My time is up, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you. Senator Tello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing all the families who, are part of the military family. It's not just my father, and by the way, he's not Navy, he was Air Force, BIBA Air Force. In fact, my brother-in-law, married to my sister, BIBA Air Force again, a veteran of Air Force, and then my children's father, Air Force again. I guess we stayed in that same line of military. But everyone has been touched, and there's no doubt about it, everybody here is supporting of the veterans. In fact, we have legislation next week to discuss why the governor's office is holding in reserve funding to the Veterans Office. In fact, in the recent reserve report, January 31st, Mr. Burns, they're holding about $207,000, $207,251. Now that, of course, was as of January 31st for the reserves in FY21. And I do note that we have in the budget bill allowed them to expend it even after the fiscal year, right, to allow them to expend it. But why is a governor's office still holding reserve for the veterans, a very, very important agency that oversees our veterans on Guam?
Thank you, Senator. BBMR, without fear or favor, holds reserves, usually of 15%, for all appropriations as a mechanism to make sure that appropriations are not overspent. Upon request from the agency or department, those reserves are generally released, especially if there's an expense that they need to be released to defray.
Yeah, and that's why I bring this up, because we received a letter from the Veterans Affairs about a payment of a power bill that needed to be paid. And so anyways, I just hope that in the future, this is an agency that we should not, the governor should reconsider holding any kind of reserves. If not, then we'll put it through legislation, because it's a very important agency. I mean, I heard, thank you, Stephanie, for being here, by the way. And also, I'd like to congratulate you for the grant that you went after to assist them. But, Mr. Chair, I attended the public hearing on this bill. I mean, let's put aside first the funding issue, because I have a really big issue with that on the funding side. Not EITC, just EITC. We already know that's moot, but I'm talking about excess revenue. And during that public hearing, there were two gentlemen, young veterans that were there, and actually didn't even realize all the options that they had on Guam and what other nonprofit organizations that are out there. And it was brought up, there are other nonprofits who receive millions of dollars in federal funding for programs such as this. So I wasn't surprised when our veteran, Bill Cundiff, came and testified against this legislation. And I did promise I would read his letter into the record that he just sent to us this morning. My name is Bill Cundiff, retired Chief Master Sergeant, U.S. Air Force. I was the chairman of the Veterans Commission for 2 terms, former member of the VA Secretary Advisory Council of Minority Veterans, and president of the Guam USAF Veterans Association. Veteran advocate for many years, as many of us know. I oppose Bill 227 for the following reasons. It is Guam Veterans Office responsibility to begin to, with counsel vets on these programs. It's their responsibility. It seems that the VAO doesn't really understand this part of their responsibility. Duplicative efforts and more responsibilities to short-man the Guam Veterans Office without additional funding and manpower. He puts these in bullet points. I'm sorry, I'm reading like other bullet point. Proposed funding isn't guaranteed. He was thinking of the EITC. Bullet point, not difficult to navigate GCC, UOG, and DOL to receive information and service. Bullet point, bill is too convoluted as written. The last bullet, convoluted as written. The bill seems to show that veterans cannot navigate GCC, UOG, GCC, and make it seem that we have a huge GCC, UOG that other veterans cannot navigate them. It passed. There should be a study to see how effective and efficient this bill is. Signed, Bill Cundiff. You know, many of us are not experts in actually all the legislation that we have on board. Many of us are not. That's why we rely on people who have been been in situations, or who have also been the presidents, or who have been veterans advocates for many years, many years, especially this gentleman. And that we should really consider what he has to say here. Convoluted, is more responsibility for Guam veterans. This is a job that they're already supposed to do. I understand what he's saying here, and I definitely don't. Right now, we are in a situation that money is no longer falling from the tree. So we have to be very careful on where we're going to spend. But the good thing about it, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, is that WestCare and other nonprofits on this island, as well as the federal side, are here to help our veterans. And that gives me comfort to know. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Tello. If you could please share that letter so that we can have it posted and provided to all the colleagues so they can get a copy of it.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. I was told he was emailed all the senators his letter, but I'll share it with the...
Only so we can load it on, because we're discussing the bill. I appreciate it. We will, before I finish, I see Senator Brown's here, and I want to make sure that everybody's got a shot to ask questions to the panel. Thank you. Senator Brown, and then we'll begin with Senator Terlai for the second round. Senator Brown, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I also attended the public hearing with regards to this bill. I think there's still a need to address clarification between services and the other nonprofit organizations that are funded that also provide services. I think we recognize the need to want to support our veterans. As we've said, I don't think there's anyone here, any family on Guam, that's not touched by having, if not themselves, a member of their immediate family served in the armed forces of the United States. And we know, at least I do personally, because my dad was 100% disabled. He was a combat veteran, and we had to go through the process back in the day, almost 20 years ago, when there's tremendous difficulty in accessing information or getting assistance for veterans, and we had to go through the Hawaii office and all the cumbersome and time-consuming process and frustration involved in all that. But ultimately, my father, as a result of his injuries, having served in active duty in combat in Vietnam, was 100% disabled. So I recognize the challenges also that family members have to go through in assisting their loved one, go through this whole process. And how can we facilitate getting them the support to access programs that benefit them? Because we also have to recognize there's a substantial amount of federal money that comes into Guam as a result of our veterans here in the community that are able to access these programs and other funding, particularly from our disabled veterans that receive an additional income from the Veterans Affairs to cover the impact of health-related issues that they've unfortunately had to suffer. But I'm not still clear, and I think we need to address that, of what and who's providing what to facilitate assistance. The other factor, too, of this bill that concerns me, as I've brought up with the other bills, is the funding source. You know, in the last few days, it's come to light that really we had less, maybe around $5 million remaining that we can access. We talked yesterday, you know, how we're going to address these other bills that are here for GUMA, and then how are we going to address another, you know, $3.5 million for the FQ Sanchez School project, which I know we all recognize is an important project. But it leaves very little money left on the table this fiscal year for us to access unless we're going to cut something else. And that does concern me. That's the main concern I have, in addition to, like I said, getting more information on how these other organizations are assisting our veterans. You know, colleagues, if indeed, as what has been brought to us, the earned income tax credit, as you know, now on the record is not available, you know, key major projects in the budget bill, like the hospital, the initial, you know, $35 million for the, you know, the seed money to facilitate the hospital, the $5 million that was intended to move forward the construction for Department of Corrections that they provided us. You know, they've made a lot of steps forward in being able to provide the design and plans, and pretty much are trying to, you know, ready to go to begin the process of constructing a new, safer facility, not so much just for the prisoners, but for the community. And we're not, now there's no money there to fund that. So, you know, I have no objection to the value of the intended purposes of this bill and the others that we've discussed in the last few days. But I'm very cautious and concerned with regards to the actual funding aspect, because we really are winding down our ability to access funds. I mean, a few days ago, the money's falling from the sky, and all of a sudden now, you know, it's all dried up and there's no rain. And we're heading into a challenging time, because I think this is only the beginning of where we're going to have to look at less revenue being available just to pay for the regular operations of government. So I just want to put that on the table. I'm open to listening, but those are my key reservations. If I don't vote for this bill, it's primarily going to be because of financial issues than it is, you know, a lack of desire to want to help and support our veterans in our community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. We will now begin the second round. And I would ask Senator Peter Terlai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You know, the letter that was written by Mr. Cunliffe, I'm aware of that. I've addressed that to the Department of Veterans Affairs in Washington, D.C., and we're just waiting for the response. There are several inconsistencies in as far as, and we're trying to correct this, because the numbers of casualties during the Korean War and the Vietnam War and the World War II is totally different with what we have. So we're trying to synchronize and come out with the solution on solidifying the same numbers with some of the Veterans Headquarters or offices. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is the how many ASO do we have right now on island? Just one or two?
Ms. Flores?
The accredited veteran services officers,
Yeah.
I don't believe that there's more than 5. I believe there's only 2.
There's only 2.
I believe so, yes, that's correct. And I know that there's some
Roland
discussion.
Roland is one of them?
Yes, sir. And he's at the Veterans Office.
What about retired Colonel Felix Casimiro? Did we pick him up?
I am not certain.
Okay. And that's all that I'm asking for. I'm just waiting for the response from the headquarters, the Veteran Headquarters, to kind of solidify and correct the numbers that we have on island with those that are over in D.C. and I guess other offices, veterans offices in the United States. So that's all, Mr. Chair. We're working on that. And like I said, I have addressed the concern of Randy, Cunliffe, and we're just waiting for the response. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Terlai. I'll now ask Senator Tony Addott, do you have any questions? We were at the second round.
No questions, Mr.
No
Chair. Thank you.
questions? Senator Brown, even though we're in the second round, do you have any more comments or questions to the panel?
Well, I just want to ask a quick question. In the event that the funding's not available for this bill, or it doesn't pass, maybe it's going to pass whether the funding is there or not, what alternatives are looked at to address the very, issues that are raised by this bill in terms of providing support for the veterans?
Thank you, Senator. As I just said, the funding is available for this bill. It's up to you, up to this body to denominate some other source of funding if you feel that's appropriate. But as far as the administration is concerned, there is funding for this bill, and basically the services that are delineated in this bill will be funded.
Well, but there's not much left, and then we're looking at taking out of what was already put in the budget bill for tax refunds and putting money in the rainy day fund. I mean, we're taking money out of one basket to put in the other basket, but we're not adding to the basket. So that's my concern. I mean, of course, the administration very easily can prioritize what they're going to fund and execute. And, funding veterans, I mean, politically, it's a very good thing. I mean, the veterans are, a substantial group on Guam, just like the retirees in Guam. And certainly, I'm sure we would all want to position ourselves to show them that we're supporting them. But again, if we move forward now with another $500,000 on top of $3.5 million, on top of $250,000 for GUMA, we're narrowing down our ability and what money and flexibility is left to pay for other critical priorities in the government, and that is a concern I think our public needs to be aware of. It's not like we're able to get this and everything else we want. I see it as at the expense of other things that many of my colleagues, funded and approved in the budget bill for this fiscal year. So I just want to bring that point up. I think that's something that's critically important here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Madam Vice Speaker, do you have any questions to the panel?
Comments to them?
No, yeah, questions or comments? We're in second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, when I look at this bill and the efforts of what this bill will do for our veterans, and you look at this Veterans Bill of Rights and how it ascertains to housing assistance, employment services, higher learning opportunities, increasing flexibility in course registrations for veterans, leveraging veterans' experience and expand on proven cost-effective training programs, access to health care. I mean, these are things that we've been literally pushing on for decades. I mean, ever since I can remember since the 27th Guam Legislature and the efforts of then Majority Leader Senator Rory Respicio, and literally traveling to Hawaii, because in order for our Guam veterans to get anything, it has to be funneled through Hawaii. And I think that's still the case now. Am I right? Maybe that's the question. Is that still the case today?
Yes, that is still the case today.
And it's just so difficult, the frustrations we hear on a daily basis. And, I said maybe I'll just be reserved because I don't know if it's a conflict for interest for me. My husband's a veteran. We're going through the process. We're doing all these things. But do I believe in my heart that this program and this resource is needed to facilitate and advocate for the veterans? Most definitely. And any which way that I can and work to promote it and facilitate it, I'm going to have to say I want to do it. And I know that we're up against a lot of financial constraints and having to take from Peter to pay Paul, or just trying to move money from here to there, or just trying to make ends meet. I understand all that, right? Our basic criteria as the government is to provide for the basic services for health, education, and safety. But when we look at the veterans and what they've been going through, per capita, we continue to be the highest. There's no question about that. But every time we need, I'm going to share with you a personal story of what's happening in my own family. The mere fact that trying to get services here, and no fault to the facilitators that are here, but it's always having to get an approval from somewhere else, or doing something else. If we can get those federal funds to come in and work that, then great. But it's not happening. And every time I see a veteran, whether it be here or off island, the same thing happens. And it's always saying, you know, I had to come to the States in order to reapply, in order to transfer, in order to get the benefits. And the first thing I ask is, what's your timeline? And it pains me. It literally pains me because they say within a month or so, and here we're still fighting year after year after year after year. So, you know, Mr. Chair, I look at this and I know there may be some amendments to this bill, but I have to believe, maybe I can even ask Mr. Byrne and Stephanie, do you feel that with the verbiage in this legislation today, that it will at least help facilitate the program moving forward to help thousands of veterans that are here on our island? Maybe you, Stephanie, first.
Well,
And is that the mission of Adelup?
yes, thank you, Vice Speaker. First, let's recognize that this bill came from veterans, right? It came from veterans from their own experience and what their frustrations are. So far be it from me to say it's not going to help, right? If the veterans themselves, who are the ultimate consumers, believe that this is going to help them and it's going to narrow our focus at the Veterans Affairs Office on what we need to do and how we need to do it to help them, then yes, I think that that's going to be a positive thing. But I would like, just if you could allow me 1 second, just to correct myself on my statement to Senator Pito. The only veteran service organization that is recognized by the U.S. Veterans Affairs is the Guam Veterans Affairs Office, and there are 4 representatives there and 1 from the VFW. So there's a total of 5 that are authorized to represent veterans. But going back to the Vice Speaker, yes, I do believe that this will help. I mean, it puts out there exactly what the veterans who are experiencing these challenges feel that the priorities need to be. And sometimes when our priorities are very broad, we need to be focused, and it's the consumers themselves that are telling us this is where we need to focus.
Ed, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you, Vice Speaker. And again, it flows from my personal experience that these services, and I'm sure there are additional services that could be offered to veterans when we get into it. And like Stephanie said, there are further services that certainly could be considered when all this data comes in. But these services need to be available to veterans. You know, as I say, from my personal experience, you know, my father could have benefited from some of these services had they been available to him. You know, I guess it was. You mentioned something about being outside the United States and having to travel to the States, and I guess he would have had to have done that even to start to benefit from these services. But for people who are here, you know, in a U.S. territory, they certainly should be able to have the full range of services available to them as readily as anybody who lives, you know, within the 50 states.
Thank you, Ms. Flores and Mr. Berna. Mr. Chair, I know my time is almost up, so I just want to say that this bill, for me, is real critical for the thousands and thousands of veterans who continue to be, you know, summarily dismissed on the side. And maybe I'm going to say that because of personal processing that we had to go through. And it's hard and it's difficult. We need these. We need this program, and as we continue to see where else we can go to get resources or to bring a bigger program here, I think we cannot stop. So this is the vehicle that's going to help us, and I support the author on this effort, Mr. Chair, and I think that we as a body need to look at it from a perspective of where they're coming from, because they're the ones who asked for it, and they're in the thousands. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My time is up.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. Senator Shelton, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I do want to offer a point of information for the body that what Ms. Flores stated was true, that this bill was created with the help of veterans. It was a collaboration between the University of Guam Masters of Public Administration cohort of veterans that graduated in the last semester. These were a group of veterans who got together. They created their own cohort with the university, and they decided that they were going to work on veterans' issues. And they came to the consensus that these were the issues that they needed to address from their personal experience. And so I wanted to ask Ms. Flores about the concern that was stated here today about duplicating services at the Veterans Affairs Office, and what you think about that, because as we did the research for this bill, as we worked together with the University of Guam cohort of veterans, we realized that the enabling legislation of the Veterans Affairs Office was extremely simple. The office is responsible for the administration of all local laws respecting veterans of the armed forces of the United States. The office shall act as the agency of the government of Guam, charged with the responsibility of cooperating with the Veterans Administration of the United States in all matters relating to local veterans. The office is responsible for assisting every veteran of Guam and the dependent or survivor of every veteran of Guam in presenting and pursuing such claim as the veteran, dependent, or survivor may have under current federal law governing VA benefits arising out of qualifying military service, and in establishing the veteran's, dependent's, or survivor's right to any privilege, preference, care, or compensation provided for by the laws of the United States or of Guam. And the office is responsible for furnishing staff services for Guam veterans and cooperating with all local veterans organizations. And this SERV Act, this Bill of Rights, very clearly states, as you said, focuses in on certain things. Housing assistance by targeting housing programs eligible to veterans and streamlining federal and local processes to expedite veteran applications. Employment support by gathering data and support for reports on workforce need projections, highlighting in-demand industries and leveraging veteran skills and experience through partnerships with federal and local agencies. Higher education opportunities by allowing veterans to be awarded college credit for military training and experience, offering early registration to veterans and accommodating veteran students called to active duty service, and healthcare by developing and operating veteran health navigator services to evaluate the eligibility of veterans for federal and local health service coverage and treatment based on their service, and preventing veteran suicide by ensuring veterans have access to mental health services to include holistic treatment for post-traumatic stress disorders, depression, suicide, and suicide ideation. So these are very specific things that we are calling on the Veterans Office to help us carry out for veterans. And these are not things stated as was mentioned in the enabling legislation of the Veterans Affairs Office. So can you speak to the duplicating of efforts here in what we're trying to achieve today?
Thank you, Senator. I don't necessarily see it as a duplication of efforts, but more as a coordination of efforts. For example, the idea that they need to go after housing programs. Okay, so I would imagine that the Guam Veterans Affairs Office would work with GURA or Guam Housing or whatever other agency, HUD as well, and get together and figure out what are the different programs that veterans can avail of. Is it VA loans? Is it housing vouchers for homeless veterans or veterans in danger of becoming homeless? Rapid rehousing programs for veterans who are falling behind because their benefits are not coming in on time. Those types of things, veterans need to have, and I think part of the problem, like what I said earlier, trying to navigate federal regulations across agencies can be very difficult. So when I read this bill, one of the things that stood out to me was I saw this as a one-stop shop. And focusing and narrowing the efforts and the job of the Guam Veterans Office to give you something. Sometimes when your purpose is too broad, it becomes unruly because you don't know where to start. Okay, there's 1,000 things under the sun we want to do, but where do we focus? And I think this is the bill that does that. It says, okay, you're going to focus on these areas. You're going to focus on healthcare, you're going to focus on housing, and you're going to focus on education, right? Because all of those things are where the veterans are finding the most challenges. And we know this through our, attending Veterans Commission meetings and just talking to veterans in general. And, the smarter people than me have come up with this list, right? I mean, these are people, a master's candidate is not a dumb person, right? They know from their experience what is the challenge. And if they're having the problems themselves, navigating these different types of programs across different types of agencies, it just becomes very overwhelming. And having a centralized focus for the Guam Veterans Affairs Office and saying, you need to focus on these things, these are your direct priorities, and this is coming directly from veterans and from the Guam Legislature, and saying, this is the policy of our island, then it's going to focus and it's going to help. And so I don't see it as being duplicating efforts, I see it as coordinating efforts.
Thank you very much for that. And I know that when this office was actually created by one of the veterans in our body, her grandfather, Vice Speaker Ted Nelson, many years ago, that was the idea, to help us serve veterans in any way that we can. And that's the vision that many of us have of what the Veterans Affairs Office has the potential of being. And so I think that this is the language that is needed to move forward, and the funding source that we know is available and we can support, really give the momentum to get going, to get out there and get federal grants, to get more support for all of the efforts that we want to coordinate for veterans. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
We will now proceed to Senator Moylan's. Will be back. Senator Duenas, any questions? Senator Torres? Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the efforts of the veterans that helped to draft this bill from the University of Guam. I just want to state, and by the way, I don't want my family members who are veterans to feel insulted that they weren't included, so I'm just going to recognize them. But I really don't want anyone on Guam to feel insulted that they were not included or recognized today, because we have so many. All of our families have veterans. They're veterans all over Guam, and so we owe them so much. But so two things. So we also have a Guam Veterans Commission who's been in place for years, and the fact that we couldn't listen to them, kind of baffles me. They've been saying directly what they need, what they think we need. Of course, we know what we need. That's when the former Vice Speaker Ted Nelson established this office. It was obvious then, obvious since then, obvious today. And the mission of the Veterans Affairs Office, to me, is almost identical, right? It's like we're telling them again, by this bill, this is your job. By the way, let's do this, or make sure that you're going to coordinate our veterans. So I have no issue with, reminding them about that. I just don't want them to think that this is something novel that we've kind of created, It's not. This is exactly what they were supposed to be doing this whole time, especially the gathering of data. That's one of we've always come back to, the issue is we don't have the data. We can't get our own medical facilities here. We can't get, there to establish that office here, that type of thing, because of the lack of data. But, we tried to, by previous laws, hook up the data with the registry, with Department of Motor Vehicles, with the mayor's offices, and when the administration changed over, it kind of, those things fall by the wayside sometimes. So, we gently remind them, hey, you got to get these programs on or find other ways to get this data. I'm so glad we're getting the programs, you're getting the training. This is fantastic. I can understand if they say they need more employees, okay, yes. But the fact that we're going to say, we need to tell you what your job is, that just kind of bothers me. And so, but I'm going to say, look, when we regrouped, at the court system, they did the veterans courts, right? And it's the same concept. We want a one-stop place where we're going to take care of all your needs, right? Or we're going to help you to navigate. So the word they use in the bill is this navigation. We're going to help you to navigate healthcare. And I guess it's just that, because here we are in the legislature, we've got $500,000 to spare, according to Mr. Byrne, right, to use. First of all, if they need the money, then release their money, right? Release it. And we shouldn't even have to debate that next week or any time, that if the Veterans Affairs Office is unable to do their job because they don't have enough funds, then their funds should not be reserved. Second, if they need money to help with, we don't need to do the training anymore. Now you're just saying we need to hire these people, but you know, we're also making a choice. Instead of hiring the specialists that they don't have here or they can't access, we're hiring people to tell them to go to a specialist, right? And maybe even to refer them that you're gonna end up going to Hawaii again, or you're gonna have to go to the Veterans Affairs Office in Tizen to actually get the health care coverage that you need, because that's the only place you can do that, right? Or that kind of thing. And I don't wanna create an additional level of bureaucracy if we know what we really need is mental health counselors, right? Like that's the highest demand need right now, or whatever that high demand, if we could fund that, I'd like to fund that. Because I believe in these agencies that are already assigned to provide housing, that they will coordinate. The administration, I want to give them credit, has done a great job. For example, homeless, they were able to make it work like a unit, right? Like we're gonna take care of all these needs. And I believe they can do the same. It just takes focus, right? I don't want to dictate what UOG is going to do, especially these master's students came out of UOG. They should have just brought that up to the UOG administration, right? You're not providing to veterans what can be provided to them, these conveniences, these better access, and even GCC's been providing it according to some of the testimony. So, you know, that kind of thing, I don't think we need to mandate. I just think we need to, but I do want, if we can focus our very limited resources to like something that's going to actually have a very direct benefit, like if we're short on housing, you know, to create the more housing. If we're short on the specialists, the counselors, to hire those, bring them in. And then I trust that the agencies that are already in place are going to be able to coordinate to get the word out, right? And the current Veterans Affairs Office, they're great. They can do that. They just need to be trained, get that word out. It's always been the challenge, but we can do that. And I don't think, I'd rather put our money into the exact service that we need.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Tell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, you know, I greatly appreciate the comments made by the prior speaker, and I share those same sentiments as well. I mean, we enjoy the freedoms of our freedom because of those who fought and took their risk to say, you know, so that we had those rights. There's no doubt that we do support our veterans here, and there are facilities. I'm sorry, on this island, you have the Guam veterans, you have the federal side, you have West Care, you have the Veterans Commission, you have groups, individuals on different, like the Air Force, the Army. There are so many groups out there, you know, working together to assist our veterans. It's almost like a slap in their face by creating this legislation, because it's like they're not doing their job, but they are. Steffi, I'm sorry, you know, you mentioned all these things that it's a one-stop shop. It's almost like we're now creating a veterans office on Guam because they're not doing their job. I know they're doing their job. I hear many, I'm sorry, I can't see you that well. Sorry, Steph, I didn't mean to. But they are doing their job there. And if the administration doesn't hold back their reserves, you know, that 10%, that $200,000 that's sitting in the account that's just holding for reserve can be spent to train those people at the Guam Veterans Office. That's the best way to utilize any funding. I mean, I've made it clear that this excess revenue, I think we should first wait for an audit before we start spending any kind of excess revenue. And to realize not only that we have a $16 million bill that we're gonna have to address on the pay raises for public safety, as well as a $6 million increase in pay raises for nurses. And what's next? Teachers. I don't want to take funding, $500,000, and throw it to something that is already in place right now. I can understand if we didn't have WestCare. I can understand if millions of dollars from federal funding is not being pumped into these nonprofit organizations or our current federal Veterans Office right now. I can understand that, then we should push on this. But no, there are millions of dollars being pumped into these areas to address our veterans. We have to be very fiscally responsible right now. I just named a few, costs, Mr. Burns, that we're going to have to address in the FY23 budget. And this is just one more. It is duplicative in nature. You have to be responsible, not irresponsible. We have to make sure that we're spending every dime, every penny that we make from this government, that it's put in places that's really going to make a difference. And not just do it for any political reasons or because it's a feel-good bill. We have to be very conscious of this. What really hits me is that, now we're pegging ourselves here against veterans. I'm a military brat. How are we going to address the other issues that we have in the FY23 budget if we're just spending whatever we can right now and not being very conscious of the non-audit for this funding? But I think Mr. Cunliffe makes a great point on a lot of these issues. I mean, here's a man who for years, decades, have been supporting the veterans. You see him at every event, all the events that go on for veterans. And he said even in his testimony, this is the first time he's ever come to a public hearing on a bill that he does not support when it comes to veterans. He said that. This is the first time. He's always supported bills for veterans, but he couldn't on this one because it was duplicate in nature. It was convoluted. If I need an expert or I need to talk to somebody about making a decision on legislation, I go to the experts and I consider this man an expert. There's no doubt that he says that money needs to go into the Guam Veterans Office to help assist them. And I agree with him there. I totally agree with them. And I hope that the oversight chair of OFB, our chairman, I know he has the same feeling about that. I do. He's hearing a bill to make sure that the reserves stay there. So I'm grateful for that, Mr. Chair. And I'm sure the veterans of our island are grateful for that too, to keep them in mind. But let's not spend money that we don't need to spend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tello. My colleagues, we have completed the 2 rounds. I will now thank the panel for being here this afternoon. Thank you very much, Ms. Trelawney, Ms. Flores, and Mr. Byrne. We will now go to a quick recess, and then when we come back, we're going to do the 3rd round. Madam Vice?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to note for the record, maybe after the panel leaves, I've got something from the Department of Veterans Affairs in Washington that was dated. I'd like to just enter it into the record, so.
Please, we don't need the panel for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you can please submit it to the clerk so we can get it out. Like I said, I want to thank the panel. My colleagues, we only have 1 amendment. No other amendments, and that's the only amendment we're going to address, and that was introduced by Senator Shelton. Thank you very much, panels, for being here. And we're at a short recess. Committee Hall is called back to order. Colleagues, we are now in the third round, which is comments and amendments. As I'm looking through the site, there's only one amendment. And we'll address comments, because there's only one amendment, it's only with Senator Shelton, so we will move with everyone, and because she's the author of the bill, she'll be last to speak and introduce her amendment, unless you want, Senator Shelton, you want to do your amendment now and be done with it, or you will save it for the end? We'll save it for the end then.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I can offer my amendment now. It's really quick.
Yeah, round three for comments, eh? We're only at comments, and then we'll do your amendments, because you're going to close, and you're the only one that has an amendment, okay? So we'll begin with comments, and we will save you for last with your one amendment and your comments, and then they'll close. And we'll hopefully be able to send this to the third reading with recommendation. We will now begin with, since we're all pretty much here, we'll go ahead and begin with you, Senator Tello. No comments? Senator Pito Talay, no comments? Madam Speaker? Okay. Senator Ada, no comments. Senator Brown, do you have any comments? We're in our third round. Any comments, ma'am? You're going to say the same thing. Okay, that's okay then. Thank you. Madam Vice, do you have any comments?
Mr. Chair, I did want to say that I believed in my heart that working closely with the Department of Veterans Affairs in Washington, and having received a letter last April that was dated April 9th, 2021, it talked about how their veteran programs here, but truly having the VA highlight, the VA Secretary highlighting how partnerships will do good for our vets. This letter expounds on that partnership, and I'd like to, I wanted to enter it into the record, but if I can't, I want to say I support the bill. I believe that we continue every day to try to see what we can do to support the veterans. This is one avenue, and this is one good way of assuring that the partnerships, and there's a true one-stop center where veterans don't have to go to 10 different places to try and get their access to resources, to training, to education, to housing, and all that's been listed. I think that this would be a good thing. So if there's no objection, I'd just like to submit it for the record.
Yes, I think that's what I asked earlier before recess. Please provide that so we can get that. Everybody will have it.
Okay.
Do we have the copy?
But I support the bill.
All right, thank you. Please, Sergeant Arms, make sure we get a copy of that, and that be placed, make copies for everyone, and then they'll be able to load it onto the drive. So that at least is part of the record. Thank you. Senator Moynihan, do you have any comments? None? Senator Duenas, any comments? None? Senator Torres, none? Madam Speaker, do you have any comments?
Yes, I'd like to make some comments before we close on this bill. I want to commend the State Clearinghouse, the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, for the training funds that they have received from the Department of Interior to fund accredited representatives to help with access to health care and disability claims. I think it's very important that we have trained, certified representatives to grow the two that we currently have. So yes, I believe that's a great benefit for the veterans, and will help when they go to the Veterans Affairs Office for help, that the people there will be able to help them. And there's nothing in this bill that I don't want for veterans. I want them to receive everything outlined here. The health care, of course, access to health care, higher education, everything that they're actually entitled to. So this bill is just reiterating that they're entitled to these things, and if we as a government, through some agency of ours, can assist you in accessing these that you're already entitled to and you fully deserve, then we should do that. And that's why the Veterans Affairs Office was set up. for counseling. Their mission is counseling, home hospital visits, health services, to work with the partners who are providing benefits and services and resources to veterans, to coordinate those, to better collaborate, and burial benefits. So, my only regret is that I didn't have enough time to prepare an amendment to include burial benefits, because if you listen to the commission, the Veterans Commission on Guam, that's one of their big complaints over the years, and that is, I know we gave them a little bit more money, Mr. Chair, and the Veterans Affairs Director has told us that they are looking at getting more grants for that cemetery if they can prove better accounting. And so they said they had it lined up, hopefully, that they are going to be able to prove that, they are in compliance with the grant requirements in order to get additional cemetery benefits, which we are all hoping for, and we're trying to, give them whatever they need as far as equipment, supplies. They need personnel, of course. They want consistent services up there, right? They've seen, and they tell me that some of the burials have certain honors, right, or provided, and some don't, and they want that to be consistent, right? And so those types of things I think we can improve on, and we're looking to the Guam Veterans Affairs Office, whose duty it already is to do that. If you listen to the other complaints of the veterans, it's that access to health care is a huge one, because they have to access that through the office in Tiza, right? And then almost always, or so often, when they complain, the CBOC just doesn't have enough services available to them right here on Guam, or it takes them a long time to get appointments, things like that, right? All of that, the limitations of the healthcare, they're sent off island. When they're off island, in order to get the PTSD training, sometimes they have to go off island to Hawaii, and they have to stay there for a while, separated from their families, things like this. So all of that, yeah. So I agree with Ms. Flores that from the State Clearinghouse that data is still the number one goal is Veterans Affairs Office, taking care of the cemetery, of course. And when any veteran walks in, every staff of that veterans office should be prepared to assist them in these ways. And I think they should be prepared to do that right now, right? That housing already available, and they should just be trained to show where to go for these services that are being provided on Guam, and to help them, to help them in any way, filling out for whatever. I think they're very competent in that way, and it's not that. It's the things we do not have that they, also need. And if we can bring in the specialists ourselves and have it right here, then we should do that. And so really, there's nothing I don't want in this bill. I think, of course, this is a great thing, but there are also other needs of the veterans that I want to meet, right? The cemetery needs, the services needs when they are having funerals, the specialist needs, most especially, Mr. Chair, mental health specialists, medical specialists, and those types of things. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Shelton, you have...
Mr. Chair, if I may, I have a point of information, if you can allow me, please.
Point of information, please.
Yes. I just recently received word that Russia conducted strikes on the infrastructure, military infrastructure and border guards in Ukraine, and I'm asking if we can do a moment of silence, as Guam has some family members that are on the front lines, and the infantry lines. My granddaughter's husband is there, and if we can just say a prayer for peace, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice. We can all rise, and we have a moment of silence. And Madam Vice Speaker, if you can lead us in a prayer, please. Senator Torres.
Hinani Tatay Lihini Zani Spiritu Santo. Lord Jesus, we always call upon you for guidance and strength especially in times when we are afraid. We ask you to give us a clear mind so that we may always carry forward in your will, that we may always be strong enough to protect those with us and to give strength to others who are feeling vulnerable and afraid. We ask, Lord, that you protect our country, you protect our children of Guam who are serving our country, and that you give peace to all of us to trust in your will and to always have faith. Faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our destiny, which is your will. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Ginani Tatay Lehina Deni Espiritu Santo.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Many of us have families that are on active duty. But we will now proceed. Senator Shelton, you have an amendment, and then we will move, because she already gave her information, the vice. They're all done. We're at you now. You have your amendment. And then after that, you will make the motion to move the bill. The committee of the whole is called back to order. I have, prior to Senator Shelton, I was asked that the speaker's going to make a notwithstanding so we can get a very important amendment in onto the bill. Madam Speaker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to, notwithstanding the rules, make an additional amendment. So to add a new subsection E to the bill that would read, and these are the things that the 500,000 would be able to provide. So subsection E would be burial benefits pursuant to 10 GCA 67105, which outlines that all veterans are entitled to burial and services there at the Veteran Cemetery without cost. I'm hoping, of course, they gave us, BBMR gave us a budget breakdown for the 500,000. Half of it, or more than half, is is slated for salaries and benefits and a little bit of overtime. And the rest, I'm hoping they will be able to, have some savings in these capital outlay, supplies and materials, equipment, and to be able to use those for these cemetery purposes as well, Mr. Chair. And I think that would help us to be responsive as well to those on the commission that have been serving for many, many years. Sitos Masi.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Anyone want to comment, or are there any objection to this amendment? Senator Tello, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the amendment and I'm trying to find out where in the bill.
That would be on page 8, line 14. It'll be right after the news media, the word news media, right before section 3, the appropriation.
Okay, I see it too.
It's just to insert that there. It's a new line. It's to make sure that the burial benefits are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any, Madam Senator Shelton, you want to comment on this?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of the amendment to, for us to include very clearly the burial benefits in the use of the appropriation. We know that this is one of the biggest concerns coming from our veterans and the Veterans Affairs Office. Anyone who's been to a burial, a ceremony at the Veterans Cemetery will see clearly the need for more resources to be put there. And we did allow in the bill for operations, the use of these funds for operations, but I'm happy to have us clearly state that we are allowing these monies for burial benefits to address this concern for our veterans and to ensure that they have the proper burial that they rightfully deserve.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. And we'll be addressing that during the budget also, making sure we get a follow-up. Where are we at with the veterans? Close the loop. Senator Tony?
You have a question for the author.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the section stated here, 67105, and it says burial in veteran cemetery. Any veteran of the United States Armed Forces shall be buried without charge to the family of the deceased veteran in the Veteran Cemetery of Guam. They currently don't charge to be buried. So I'm just trying to see where this section here fits in. The burial plot and the marker are provided at no cost to the veteran or the dependent, eligible dependent. So I'm just trying to, if we can just take a quick recess.
Oh, no, well, I will yield.
All right, Madam Speaker.
Yes, that's correct. So they're entitled to those benefits, services without cost to the veterans. But of course, there is cost to the government of Guam in some of those things. For example, the equipment that they need to actually provide these services at the cemetery, to maintain the cemetery, and to provide the services at the funeral. Sometimes they also need that, and staffing for those things as well. So yeah, so this is, yeah.
I think there's such equipment like the lifters that they use and all the equipment that they need to process the burial. Yes. Senator Tony, did that pretty much answer the question? Senator, that pretty suffice?
Yeah, I think, and perhaps maybe the clarification there is that it may be charged, but it's reimbursed by the Veterans Affairs. So they turn around, and every time an interment for a veteran is done, GVC, Guam Veterans Cemetery, submits documents. And then those documents are submitted to the U.S. Veterans Affairs, and they're turn around and reimbursed for every burial that it's done there. So I don't object to it. I'm just trying to figure out if we're trying to utilize it for equipment, then perhaps maybe just state it here so that we know it's for the equipment and not the purposes of burial. I'm not sure how we're gonna. We can just take a quick recess, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's just take a real short recess. Thank you. The committee hall is called back to order. I know that the author of the amendment plus our good colleague from Sinanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After consulting with the author of the amendment, I'm good with it and no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like, are there any others? And if there are would you need a closing on this one?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing this amendment and my colleagues for their support and the author of the bill, of course, for her support as well. Si Diyos masi, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for this amendment. There being no objection, amendment passes. We will now proceed to Senator Shelton for her closing comments and her motion to move on this bill.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity to hear this bill in the Committee of the Whole. And I want to thank our colleagues today for the discussion as well as the panel for providing us with the information. I want to thank our co-sponsors of the measure, all of the veterans of the Guam Legislature, Senators Talina Nelson, yourself, Senator San Augustine, Senator Pito Terlahi, Senator James Moylan, Senator Tony Yada, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes, for joining me, and Vice Speaker not as a veteran, but as a wife of a veteran, for joining me as co-sponsors of this bill, and for their service to our island and to our nation. And I want to thank all of our colleagues for hopefully their support on this bill, because we know that this SERVE Act means more to our veterans than just showing our gratitude and simply saying thank you for your service, but it allows us to put the resources needed to the services that are needed at the Veterans Affairs Office. And so I look forward to this measure moving and being voted on. With that, Mr. Chair, I move that Bill number 227-36, as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations and Housing, and further amended in the Committee of the Whole, with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to be placed in the third reading file.
On the motion that it be placed in the third reading file with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole, are there any objection? Being none, motion carries. We will now stand at recess at this point.
Thank you.
No. Oh, correction, no, we have to rise. Please. Senator Shelton.
Mr. Chair, I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation that Bill number 227-36 COR, as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations and Housing, and further amended in the Committee of the Whole, be placed in the third reading file.
On that motion, are there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, Motion carries. We stand in recess.
We are back from recess from the Committee of the Whole, and Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to report back to the body after the deliberation of Bill 227-36 CR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and further amended in the Committee of the Whole, that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole is to place Bill 227-36 CR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and further amended on the Committee of the Whole on the third reading file, ma'am.
On that motion to place Bill 227-36 COR on the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. So colleagues, we've now exhausted the second reading folder, and we are going to recess to allow engrossment until 5 p.m. Friday, which is tomorrow, 5 p.m. tomorrow. We are on recess until 5 p.m.